Is gone. A family is still waiting. An official autopsy has been completed in Mississippi, and the results have not been shared with the people who need them most. This is the story of Nolan Wells. Not the version that races across social media, not the version that turns grief into content. The version that asks one question and refuses to let it go. What happened to Nolan Wells? Good morning. I'm your narrator, and this is independent investigative reporting that does not wait for permission, does not soften hard questions, and does not treat a family's pain as background noise. If you are new here, stay with me. If you already know this channel, you know exactly why we do this work the way we do it. Today we go deeper into the latest developments, the unanswered questions, the competing accounts, and the quiet determination of a mother and father who refuse to accept incomplete answers. Before we begin, understand this. Every claim you hear will be clearly labeled. Allegation, family statement, attorney statement, reported information, unanswered question. We do not turn speculation into fact. We do not invent evidence. We follow the record as it currently stands. If you believe families deserve transparency, if you believe independent journalism still matters when official channels move slowly, and if you want the next update the moment it becomes available, hit subscribe right now. This channel exists for people who refuse to accept the first convenient narrative. Every subscription keeps these investigations independent, free of corporate filters, and focused on the evidence rather than the noise. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us. The family is still waiting. So are we. Last night the news broke quietly and then spread fast. The state autopsy in the Nolan Wells case has been completed. That single fact changes the temperature of everything. For weeks, the family has asked for clarity. For weeks, the official process has remained largely silent. Now the medical examination itself is finished. What that means for the family, for the timeline, and for the larger investigation is still unknown. Benjamin Crump, the attorney representing the family, confirmed that media inquiries reached him before any formal briefing from the district attorney's office. A meeting is scheduled for next week. Whether that meeting will include the actual findings remains an open question. In cases like this, authorities hold significant discretion. They can choose transparency early. They can choose to withhold until a grand jury has reviewed everything. They can release limited information or none at all until they decide the investigation is complete. There is no fixed public timetable. The decision rests with the district attorney's office. The family has asked, repeatedly, for the same standard they believe any parent would demand. Treat this as if it were your child. Give us the honesty, the respect, and the transparency you would expect for your own. That request is simple. The process around it is not. An independent autopsy was also performed at the family's request. The independent examiner has already stated a critical limitation. By the time the body was available for that second examination, the organs had already been dissected by the state medical examiner. Certain observations, particularly regarding the airways and the presence of water in the lungs, may therefore depend heavily on the original state examination. 2 examinations, 2 sets of observations, 1 body, and still no public release of the official findings. The autopsy is not the end of the investigation. It is one piece. Toxicology results, digital evidence, witness accounts, timeline reconstruction, and the broader evidentiary picture all remain in play. Even if the official cause of death is determined to be drowning, larger questions remain. What was the condition of Nolan's body before he entered the water? Was he conscious? Was force involved? What do the digital records show about the hours leading up to the incident? Those questions do not disappear simply because an autopsy has been signed. Christine and Elmore Wansley are not abstract figures in a news cycle. They are parents who have not been allowed to grieve in private because the public narrative moved faster than the official process. Christine has described a kind of enforced dissociation. Because answers have not arrived, the ordinary stages of grief cannot fully begin. The family remains suspended, unable to accept early accounts that did not align, unable to move forward without the full picture, and forced to listen to public commentary that often treats their son's character as fair game. She has been clear. The family does not accept the early narrative that reduced the death to a simple drowning and invited the public to move on. Stories did not line up, timing did not line up, and the absence of a thorough public accounting left too many gaps. When the news arrived that the state autopsy was complete, her first reaction was measured surprise, followed by the same cautious hope the family has carried for weeks. The district attorney's office had attempted contact. A missed call, timing, and the practical reality of constant harassment calls that forced her to change phone settings all delayed a direct conversation. What she wants is not complicated. Do your job. Treat this as if it were your own child. Provide the honesty and transparency any parent would demand. Elmore has spoken with the same restraint and the same clarity. The family is not accusing specific individuals on the public record. They are demanding a fair and thorough investigation because the accounts they have received so far do not add up. Times conflict. Stories conflict, and until those conflicts are resolved under proper process, the family cannot begin to grieve properly. They have also used the attention surrounding their son's death to stand with other families of young black men whose deaths have raised similar questions of transparency and process. That choice was deliberate. They understand the platform that grief sometimes creates, and they have chosen to share it. An autopsy answers certain questions. It does not answer all of them. It can speak to cause of death. It can speak to the presence or absence of certain injuries. It can incorporate toxicology. It can document the condition of the body at the time of examination. It cannot, by itself, reconstruct every moment that preceded the discovery of the body. It cannot automatically resolve conflicting witness statements. It cannot replace digital records or location data. It cannot decide whether a person entered the water consciously or unconsciously, under force or without force. The independent examiner's limitation is important to understand. Once the state examination has already opened the body and examined the organs, certain direct observations become unavailable to a second examiner. The second examiner may therefore rely in part on the documentation and findings of the first. If the two examinations ultimately differ, that difference does not automatically prove wrongdoing. It does, however, create a question that must be examined by investigators, by a grand jury if one is convened, and ultimately by whatever legal process follows. Differences in medical opinion are not rare. They are resolved through process, not through public assertion. The family and their counsel have stated they will press for access to the findings. Whether that access comes before or after grand jury review remains unknown. The timeline for any grand jury is controlled by the district attorney. It could be next week. It could be months. The family has no control over that schedule. What they do control is their continued insistence on transparency. From the earliest days, a narrative emerged that Nolan had been heavily intoxicated. That narrative has been disputed by people who knew him and who report seeing him in the hours before the incident. One adult who spoke with him that afternoon described a conversation about college plans and future goals and said Nolan appeared perfectly fine. The family views the rapid emergence of a sloppy drunk story as part of a familiar pattern. After a death that raises questions, attention shifts toward the character of the deceased. They reject that shift. Even if alcohol had been involved, an assertion they do not concede as established fact, it would not, by itself, answer how Nolan died or whether every available fact has been examined. Christine has refused to engage certain public figures by name. She has stated plainly that the only question that matters to the family is what happened to Nolan. Distraction, she has said, serves no one who is actually seeking answers. The family has also reported receiving harassing calls severe enough to require changes to phone settings. That pressure exists alongside the public commentary. It is part of the environment in which they are trying to obtain information from official sources. At a press conference held in conjunction with the Urban League, the family stood with other parents and relatives of young black men whose deaths have also raised questions of process and transparency. One case involved Daniel Irving. According to the account presented by counsel, the death was initially described as an accidental drowning, even though the young man had been a swimmer. 2 other teenagers were present. Cell phone, clothing, and text messages were reportedly discarded. After days of searching and public attention, the young men and their parents came forward with an account of accidental drowning and fear. Charges of evidence tampering followed. The mother of Daniel Irving has stated that the attention generated by the Nolan Wells case contributed to official action that had previously been slow. Another case involved Tyler Smith in Lexington, Kentucky, on the same day Nolan went missing. According to the account given, Tyler was the only black person present at a 4th of July gathering. He was found shot in the head. The initial explanation offered was Russian roulette or accidental self-inflicted injury. No gunshot residue testing was performed at the scene, according to the family's account. A grandmother refused to accept the initial explanation. Subsequent analysis showed casings that did not match the gun first identified. A different weapon was later produced. Evidence tampering charges were filed. No one has been charged with the killing itself. These cases are not presented here as legally identical to Nolan's. They are presented as the context the family and their counsel chose to highlight. Families of young black men who believe official processes move too slowly, accepted early accounts too readily, or failed to preserve and examine all available evidence with equal urgency. The press conference was emotional. It was also strategic. The family used the attention surrounding their own loss to insist that other families' questions also deserve serious examination. Because private counsel is not law enforcement, certain tools are required to preserve and obtain information. One of those tools is the opening of an estate. Nolan's mother serves as the personal representative of that estate. That legal status allows the issuance of subpoenas aimed at preserving phone records, social media data, text messages, and related digital material. The stated purpose is preservation. The family and counsel do not yet know which pieces of digital evidence will prove relevant. They do know that once digital material is lost or altered, it cannot be recovered. Subpoenas in anticipation of possible litigation are a standard mechanism to prevent that loss. This is not a declaration that civil lawsuits have already been filed against specific parties. It is a declaration that the family intends to use every lawful tool available to them to ensure evidence is not destroyed while official processes continue. Counsel has stated the position clearly. They are engaged in a ferocious search for the truth. They will follow the evidence wherever it leads. They are for truth regardless of whom it implicates or exonerates, and for justice regardless of whom it convicts or acquits. Transparency, they argue, serves everyone. Reports of threatened defamation actions by relatives of other young men involved in public commentary have been dismissed by counsel as distraction. The focus, they repeat, remains the single question, what happened to Nolan Wells? While the official investigation continues, autopsy complete but findings unreleased, digital evidence still under examination, grand jury timeline unknown, public commentary has multiplied. Parents defend their children. Commentators dissect timelines. Social media generates theories at high speed. One father of a young man who has spoken publicly has reportedly threatened legal action against the family's attorney. Independent observers have begun comparing public statements against available timelines and raising questions about consistency. All of that is predictable in a high-attention case. None of it is the same as a completed investigation. Finding an inconsistency in a public account is not the same as proving a crime. Questioning a timeline is not the same as solving a case. Defending someone against public accusation is not the same as proving innocence. Confidence is not certainty. The evidence has not finished speaking. That distinction is the journalistic discipline this channel intends to maintain. We will ask hard questions. We will examine public statements. We will report developments as they become verifiable. We will not pretend that commentary equals conclusion. If you value reporting that refuses to confuse volume with proof, that refuses to treat a grieving family as a content opportunity, and that will return to this case every time a new verified development appears, this is the place. Subscribe now. Independent channels survive because people who want serious coverage choose to support them. Your subscription is the difference between investigations that continue and investigations that disappear when the algorithm moves on. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with the evidence. What is established on the public record so far? The state autopsy in Mississippi has been completed. The family and their counsel have not yet received the full findings. A meeting with the district attorney's office is scheduled. An independent autopsy was performed. Certain observations were limited because the body had already been examined by the state. Digital evidence, including phone and social media records, is the subject of preservation efforts through estate subpoenas. The family continues to seek transparency and a thorough investigation. Other families of young men whose deaths raised process questions stood with them at a public press conference. Public commentary and competing narratives continue at high volume. What remains unknown: the full content of the official autopsy and toxicology findings, whether and when those findings will be shared with the family, the timeline for any grand jury review, the complete digital record and what it will show once examined, whether any criminal charges will ultimately result, how the various public accounts will be tested against physical and digital evidence. The gap between those two lists is the space in which this investigation still lives. If you were present, if you have original photographs or video, if you saw something that has not yet been shared with investigators, the family asks that you contact the appropriate authorities or the established case channels. Original material matters. Second-hand accounts and social media screenshots do not replace it. Friends of Nolan who may have information are specifically asked to come forward. The family has stated that if the roles were reversed, they would expect the same. A mother and father are still waiting. An autopsy is complete, but its findings are not yet public. Digital evidence is being preserved and examined. Competing public narratives continue to multiply, and the single question that has never changed remains: what happened to Nolan Wells? The autopsy may answer some of that question. It may not answer all of it. The rest of the evidence still has to speak. This channel will continue to follow the record as it develops. We will not manufacture certainty. We will not sensationalize tragedy. We will not treat allegation as established fact. We will return to the evidence, to the family's stated requests, and to the process that is still unfolding. If you have stayed with this report to the end, you already understand why independent coverage of cases like this matters. Corporate outlets move on. Algorithms reward volume over verification. Families are left repeating the same unanswered questions to smaller and smaller audiences. Subscribe to this channel if you want the next verified development the moment it is available. Subscribe if you believe transparency is not optional. Subscribe if you want reporting that keeps the focus on the evidence rather than the loudest voice in the room. Every subscription strengthens the ability to stay on stories that powerful institutions would prefer to close quietly. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Share this report with anyone who still believes the question, "What happened?" deserves a real answer. The family is still waiting. The investigation continues. We will be here when the next chapter arrives. What happened to Nolan Wells? The evidence is still speaking. Subscribe for updates.